Dr. Justice, you've looked at and done over 18,000 EEG brain scans. Curious what you have learned and what's been the most shocking thing you discovered about how people perform and make decisions under pressure.
Yeah. So, very easy, simple question. Let me give you some context so that my response to your question can make better sense because it's a good question. It deserves a good answer. First of all, thank you for having me. So, for your audience, they might not know what EEG is, and what these 18,000 plus brain scans are. So, first of all, the language of the human brain is electricity. Now, I didn't know that until I was well into my 20s, and I don't know that most people know that. So, it's important, I think, for people to understand that the language of the brain, the way that the brain communicates within itself and with its body, is electricity. Right? It is the gas of the car, if you would. So I think a good question to ask is why electricity? It's the same electricity as a light bulb or in a battery, but like why electricity? Why not light? Why not osmosis? Why not gravity? Why not something else? Well, if you think about it, the answer is quite simple: speed. The light is the fastest phenomenon that we have, and electricity is the sort of second fastest. Now, you may say, why does the brain need speed? So, the example I want to give you and your audience is, Frank, imagine that you're walking at a park outdoors somewhere, and about 10 feet in front of you, suddenly you see something black. Now, the light from that object has got to travel from that object through your eyes. It's got to go through your eyes to the retina, then from the optic nerve to a place where you can label it. And the label that your brain gives out of the massive inventory of what it can label that black thing comes up with snake. Not a stick, not a bicycle, not a car, not a toy, but a snake. In addition to that label, it then says danger. It knows that. Once it gives that label, it then turns your body around and makes you run the other way. It doesn't make you run at the snake and try to jump it over. So think about all of that, an object, light from there goes through your eyes. Your brain has to make sense to it, then initiate this very powerful motor function of turning around and running away. Right? So the ability to label something, to then label it and interpret it, requires an enormous amount of speed. And Frank, all of that happened in like what, 1 second, right? So electricity really is the language of the brain. So many things that have to happen very quickly for our survival. So what I measured in these 18,000 brain scans, not to answer your question, um, was the electricity in the human brain. And my initial work started off with athletes. And the reason it started off with athletes is because you can see the outcome of this collaboration between sensory input. What are you seeing? What are you feeling? What are you hearing? What are you tasting? And your brain's ability to decode it. And then if there's a motor function involved, and most athletes, there is one, like I'm trying to shoot a free throw, I'm trying to make a putt, I'm trying to throw a football, I'm trying to kick a soccer ball, I'm trying to throw a spear. Like this is a collaboration between what your eyes see, in this case, a target, where I want the ball to go or finish, and what it needs your body to do. Between that sensory input and your motor function, the brain gives it context. It has to. It has to say, this is a ball, and I'm just sending it over there, and over there is either 3 feet away or 30 feet away. And it has to say, oh, this is, 1 second to go with the game on the line, or it's just 3 seconds into the game and we still got 90 minutes to go. Like our brain is constantly giving context in the same way that it looked at that object and saw a snake and labeled it an animal, labeled it danger. So what I started to do, Frank, was I started to look at the human brain literally in the seconds, maybe up to a minute or two at the most, before an athlete wanted to do something to the best of their ability. Now, for an athlete, so pick any sport. Let's pick basketball. If I have the ball in my hand and I'm running and need to stop and shoot, right? What's going on in their brain in those seconds before? And is the electricity at a certain level when the person makes the shot? And is it at a different level when the basketball player, misses the shot? So truthfully, Frank, I didn't know the answers to that question. There was some research and some minor data, But the very technology that my team and I were using was new. It's only like 10, 15 years old in terms of functional. The ability to measure what's going on in the brain has been around, decades. But typically, it's where you have to stay very still, like an MRI machine or an fMRI machine. You're horizontal. You have to stay very still. There's a big helmet and wires coming around, and there's a 3 or 4 second delay in capturing the image of the brain. Well, that's not useful. Like, what can you do laying down, stuck with a helmet in your head? But with this new technology, you can not just put something like the headset that you have on, maybe a little bit lighter, like a band on your head. It doesn't feel like anything is there other than like maybe a hat like the one that you're wearing. So it's not a distraction. So you can measure. So I found out that there is, in fact, a state of electricity. So electricity is measured in hertz. And so, just to make things simple for your audience, Frank, imagine a scale from 0 to 100. It's not entirely accurate, but for the purpose of this podcast, let's just go with that. 0 to 5. So, when the frequency in the human brain is between 0 to 5 hertz, so on a scale from 1 to 100, that's way down, it's very low. That is what happens when somebody is sleeping. So, if you think about it, when you're sleeping, how much work is your brain doing? It's not walking around. It's not looking at something to interpret it. It's not smelling anything. It's not communicating. It's not listening. So the activity is low. So that makes sense. We're not doing that much work. Now, the brain is doing other things when you're sleeping, which is very important. But the workload in terms of, in contrast to what it does. Now, imagine 100 hertz. So I gave you 0 to 5. So let's imagine 90 to 100. When the brain has that level of electricity, typically we are yelling, we are screaming, we are angry. Like, all of our defense mechanisms are on high alert. The parasympathetic nervous system is like, run, your pupils dilate, there's a surge of glycogen in your body. And we feel threat, we feel danger. There are consequences to whatever human experience we are feeling. So now you and your audience have an idea of, okay, 0 to 5 sleeping, 90 to 100, crazy, stupid, mad. So where is that optimal state? When people are making free throws, making putts, having the best ideas, showing the highest levels of compassion and empathy and creativity and imagination, is that like a certain level? The answer is yes. And that's around 10 hertz. Now, 10 is not that far from the 0 to 5. Now, the next question is over and over again, is why? Why 10? Why not 20? Well, like, why is it so low? So the analogy I want to give, and then I'll pause, and then we can go deeper. Is imagine that your brain has traffic, like cars on a road. So our brain has 80 to, I don't know, 90 billion neurons, which, like, I don't even know how to qualify that. Like, I can barely qualify in my imagination 1 million. I've been to a NFL football stadium, and there were like 75,000 fans. So I know what 75,000 or 100,000 of something looks like. I have no idea what a million of something looks like, much less 80 to a 90 billion. But that's a lot of little things, neurons in the brain. So when there's a lot of traffic in the human brain, so we're above 10 in the 80, 90, 70, in that general area, two things are going on. Number one, our sensory input. So what I see, what I feel, what I taste, what I hear, has competition, right? So the analogy I want you to use, imagine, Frank, you've had a really long day at work, like 8 to 5, typical work day. You're exhausted. It's been one bad Zoom call and meeting and interaction after another. At 5 o'clock, you get in your car, you want to drive home. It's a 30-minute drive. You put your favorite music on. When you get home, if I asked you, hey, dude, like, what were you listening to on the radio? You probably couldn't tell me, because he was thinking about what happened at 2 o'clock and at 10 o'clock and what that person said and what this person said and this email and that thing. So the auditory stimulation was there. The music was coming out, but because there was so much noise in our head, we couldn't process it. So at 10 hertz, the traffic is low. So sensory input doesn't have competition. So when an athlete says, oh, I was making all my shots, the basket felt like a big giant hole. Or when a guy's making putts and says, oh, the hole felt so big, the hole is not big. The size of the hole of the basket doesn't change. But because there's no competition in the brain, you're seeing more of the basket, more of the hole where you want the ball to go in. You're seeing a bigger image of the person you want to pass the ball to. So magic happens when the noise in our brain is low. The second thing that happens at 10 hertz that's magical is that this is very important, access. So access is different than skill. Skill is a knowledge that I have. There are these neurons where I've learned something. It's a memory, right? So skills and knowledge, that inventory, right, lives in our brain. Like everything that's ever happened to you, Frank, everything from the time you were born till now, where is all that information? Where is that, interaction experience you had with your mom, your dad, your siblings? It's not stored in some hard drive like in your basement or in some thumb drive. It's stored in your brain. So at 10 hertz, when there isn't a lot of noise in our brain, we access more of what is already there. So people, when I work with professional athletes or head coaches, by the way, nobody calls me when they're doing well. Everyone calls me when they've sort of hit rock bottom. And one of the common things they say to me is I don't have confidence. Again, confidence is not a real thing, like your nose or your eye or your teeth or your glands or your heart or your liver. What confidence means is that in this particular moment where I have to do something, I can remember what my coach told me. I can remember what I did in practice. I can remember the other similar situation where I did do something well. So when I access that inventory, I feel confident. I'm optimistic. I know I can handle it. Now, that's not a choice. Like, who in any given moment says, let me not access the things that I've done that are related, that are positive. Instead, let me access the trauma. Let me access when I did miss it. Let me access the inventory that says people will laugh at you when you miss it, right? So at 10 hertz, those two magical things happen. Our sensory input gets amplified because there's no competition. And that's why when people say, I just want to be in the moment, I just want to be present, like, think about that. What does that really mean? It means that in this moment, I am seeing more, hearing more, feeling more. Well, that's sensory input. Right. And then in that moment, you also access the right things to say. It could be a conversation, a dinner, or whatever it is. But somehow you're remembering what your dad told you, what your mom told you, an experience that you have in fifth grade. Whatever is relevant to the situation at hand, your brain accesses it. And now you feel like, ooh, I'm in this moment, I'm alive. Like, where is this coming from? So I gave you a long answer to that question, but I found that, in those seconds before someone wants to do something to the best of their ability, if they're at 10 hertz, the odds go up significantly. It's not a guarantee, but it goes up significantly.
There's so much to unpack there, and I appreciate the context provided before giving the response and answer. I think what you described there with the athlete, that the hoop is appearing bigger, the shots are going on, feels like the game has slowed down. If you've ever played sports at a high level, hopefully you've had that experience on the field, on the court somewhere. I think most athletes that get to a certain level have had that. For those that don't, have seen that and witnessed it in some of the greats that we all look to and admired. It's typically described as a state of flow. The interesting thing that I think you said there, though, is like these states of flow are not, I think I would have thought that it would have been like when you're at the higher hertz, so like a higher frequency. But it's like, no, when you're calm, how is that enabling your body to perform higher? Like, what's the correlation there between a calm mind, but then a body that is performing at its peak?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so I personally, again, I honor past knowledge. If there's past knowledge that I don't agree with it, I don't view that as wrong or malintent. I just view it as kind of outdated. And the analogy that I use, and I'll answer your question, is I'll give you an example. When COVID happened, my son and I, because we had nothing to do, decided to clean our garage. It's a three-car garage, and lived in this house for 25 plus years. So, as the kids grow up, you just throw so much junk in the garage. And he was cleaning this one shelf and he found a road atlas. And was like, Dad, what is this? I don't know how old you are, but back in the day, every car had a road atlas. You literally opened up a page of a state and you found out where you wanted to go. And he was like, what is this? I said, road atlas. I'm like, what's it for? I said, well, we used to use it. And he literally said to me, why didn't they just use Google Maps? I was like, dude, because we didn't have it. Now, the people that invented the road atlas to go in a car are not bad people. They weren't even wrong, but it is outdated. Do you know what I mean? Like if so I honor my lived experiences using the road atlas. But if someone today were to use a road atlas, you'd be like, what are you doing? Like, do you not know Google Maps or Waze or whatever it is? Like, it'll tell you traffic, it'll talk to you, it'll tell you when to turn left, right. Like, this is so much easier. So when people use terms like flow is not real. Like, there's nothing, it's not a nose, it's not a gland, it's not an organ, it's not a tendon, it's not a muscle. So, you know, now we know how the brain works. So again, when the brain is vibrating low, when the electricity is low, so around the 10 hertz category, like I said, those two magical things happen. So this collaboration between what you're seeing or what you have to do, the current situation, and your body's ability to sort of go do what it is trained to go do, there's no traffic, there's no competition. And when people say things feel very slow when I'm in the zone state, that's what they're saying because it is slow, it is lower, right? So even anecdotally, like you don't even need to do 18,000 scans. If any of your audience members, all the dudes out there, if you go watch the press conference of any athlete that has just won their event, a tennis player, a basketball player, and you ask them, hey, well, what did that feel like winning? They will use terms like, I was very calm out there. I was very relaxed. I was in the moment. They'll say things like, I wasn't thinking very much. Like these are consistent historical things that people say when they're at the best version of themselves. Now, I'm a triathlete. I've done many Ironmans, and you know, the sometimes when I'm running, so we call it runner's high. I don't know if you know what that means, but sometimes when you're running and your heart rate is whatever 140, 150, 160, 170, it feels like I'm floating. Not always, but sometimes. So that's why heart rate is not a true correlation to the EEG. These are separate biomarkers. They're not the same, right? So sometimes people think, oh, I can only be calm when I'm sitting down doing nothing. That's not true, right? So one is a brain state and one is a heart rate. So the purpose of the heart is a slave to the brain. Like the brain tells you what's going on so that you can basically get more oxygen, more blood, and get your body ready for this intense physical activity. So being calm can happen in any situation. I work with NASCAR drivers, for example, and when they're driving, I don't know if you've ever been in a NASCAR or even a sports car, it is loud and it's so fast. And you literally have seconds or microseconds, I would say, to respond. So even though the overall activity of what the brain is doing is very high, the state, the gas that the brain is using is a low frequency. So I know it's a little bit counterintuitive, but it is a calmer state. It is a slower state, as again evidenced by people who win something or achieve something, and that's typically what they say.
Yeah. Now, I know a lot of your work has been with golfers. We talk about these high level athletes, and I'm curious how much of your work has been done. You mentioned NASCAR there, of like, because there's the different type of sports, right? You're stepping up to a putt. There's not a defender standing in front of you. Action isn't taking place in real time. In the NASCAR, though, obviously there's other cars. You're having to respond a whole lot quicker. Think of the NFL, right? There was an amazing play. I think it was last season. Saquon Barkley running down the line. He had two defenders kind of colliding on him at the same time. He half turned, stopped, pivot, jumped over the athletes. Like, it was the most athletic play I've ever seen happen in any level of professional sports. His ability to be calm in that moment, right, and process everything else happening, but then actually get his body to do something that maybe a handful of people in the world could actually do. Obviously, he had to be at a low frequency state. I'm curious how people control this differently when you're stepping up to a putt where you're in control. There's not anything that's happening against you versus in some of those other moments, NASCAR, and then other sports where there's defenders running at you.
Yeah, no, so I would say golfers is probably 25%. I'm rounding up here, but probably 25% of the people that I've worked with. I would say the other 50% are athletes in other sports like tennis. And in tennis, there is an opponent across the net that is trying to make you do bad. So and even in soccer or football, sometimes it's a teammate sport, like if you're an offense in football. Um, so it actually doesn't matter what sport you are playing. For that matter, it doesn't even matter what human endeavor you are trying to do. Let's say that for you, high performance is to go, like, I have two kids. I'll give a great example. Both my kids are in college, right? So I don't see them very often. But when I do see them, I like legitimately want to be present. I don't want to be thinking about the emails or what I did yesterday. I mean, I literally don't see them anymore. And my daughter actually is graduating in about 3 weeks, and she's going to go off to another city and start a new life and a job there. So I'm going to see her even less. So it doesn't matter what function, what athletic sport you're doing, or what human experience you are doing. It could be, I just want to respond to this email. It could be, I have a problem. I want to come up with the best idea. It doesn't matter. Remember, magic happens when sensory input is amplified and you bring to it your best inventory. Now, Saquon Barkley, I don't know if you ever saw Barry Sanders, but Barry Sanders was the original Saquon Barkley. He did that every game. I mean, what he did, and the way that he could pivot and stop and do all those kinds of things, you know, in that moment, he had to rely on what his eyes were seeing. And whatever he saw, he made his body do without even thinking. So his sensory amplification, especially visual input, was off the charts. One of the greatest basketball shots I've ever seen in my life, I'm showing my age, was in the 90s when Jordan was playing the Lakers, and he goes up with one hand and midair switches. And if you ask him afterwards, I was like, oh, that was a great shot. And he said, the reason he did that wasn't to show off. He said he saw AC Green coming, the defender, and he wanted to block it. And very quickly he said, let me get it on the other side so he doesn't block it. So the greatest shot, in my opinion, that I've ever seen, literally, I mean, you're up in the air, you're with your right hand on the ball, about to, do a layup. Mid-air, you change hands and you put the ball on the other side of the I mean, are you kidding me? But all of that was him just reacting to the visual input. He didn't see AC Green coming and say, "Oh boy, like, I better go harder, faster." His brain quickly calculated, like looking at a snake and seeing danger. So at 10 hertz, right? The brain, I wish I could, oh, Frank, one of my goals in my life is to convince every human being that everything that they need, literally everything that they need to be enormously successful, to be happy, they already have. And that's their brain. Like there's no human situation. Name the worst human situation that you could be in. I'm starving. I'm in a war area. I have no food. I have no water. You can still get your brain to 10 hertz. You can still say, okay, in this moment, what's the most creative thing I can do to survive? So it's such a simple rule that the first part of every human challenge is to get to 10 hertz. But usually when we're faced with a challenge, like whatever the problem is, we think, how do I solve it? Instead of saying, let me get my brain to 10 first. And the 10 hertz brain will access more inventory. You'll think of someone to call, something to do, something that you read. It'll somehow take 20 different life experiences and put them together and give you what's known as an idea. And suddenly you find yourself surviving. And suddenly you find yourself resourceful and creative for whatever moment you have at hand.
Yeah, and I definitely want to get into these tactics and strategies and give the audience something tangible to walk away with. It's funny you share that highlight of Jordan. I was probably 7 years old at the time. I was born in '83, so it would have been the summer of '91. Um, I always recall that as like my first memory of basketball. It may be because it's just been played over and over again, but it is probably the time that I fell in love with Jordan. I actually remember I was sitting at the edge of my parents' bed watching NBA on NBC. I can remember the music from that era and from that generation. Incredible. Before we get into the tactics and strategies, I want to ask a question because the audience may be wondering, what does this mean about our will? Because you mentioned something. We're talking about access versus skill, not having choice. The way that you described how the brain is kind of feeding us information with that description of the snake, it almost seems like certain things are beyond our choice, will, or decision.
So look, our brain is the most biased organ around, right? Meaning, like, if you want to understand something that you don't understand, you're going to go to Google or ChatGPT or whatever it is. You'll type in whatever you want to understand, and it'll scour the internet. It'll give you videos, it'll give you articles, depending on whatever search engine you use, and it'll present to you from the body of knowledge of the topic that you have the best information so that you can understand it, right? Now, that is, for the most part, not biased. Now, think of what your brain does. When your brain experiences something, it doesn't say, yo, 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 stop. Let me go search the internet and I'll come back to you and I'll give you the best answer. It is doing that, but it's not searching the internet. It's searching your inventory, your life experiences. So that's very limited in terms of the vast body of knowledge that is out there, vast human experiences. So we're very biased, number one. We're not objective. Number two, unfortunately, and well, fortunately, unfortunately, I don't know, but the factory setting, this is very important for all of you guys, especially. I know you do a lot of work with helping men and pornography and other types of addictions, but okay. So, unfortunately, or fortunately, when our brain makes sense of something, it goes to one place first. This is a factory setting. This is how our brain comes out. And it's necessary, unfortunately. So what it does is that the first job of the human brain and the human experience is to protect you. Survival, period. Right? If there's an itch right now, so if you feel like a sting on your left shoulder, you will stop this. Your hand will go there. You'll start itching it because this you and me talking is not as important as someone trying to harm this little bee or whatever bug it is that's biting you right now. So the way that our brain makes sense of something is to initially ascribe it a threat rating. Now, remember, I just said that your threat rating is not objective, it's very biased. So, where does that danger come from? Well, it comes from, get this, our trauma. So, when we give meaning to something, is this good? Is this bad? Is this safe? Is this danger? That is biased. It's not objective. Right? Now, if someone points a gun at you, well, that's going to be a danger for most people. But you know who it might not be a danger to? A 6th-degree martial arts expert or, a well-trained FBI agent. They'll know what to do. So their brain says, oh, in the searching of their inventory. Now, for us human beings, our brain does not scour all of our life experiences, the good and the bad. It goes not just to the bad first, but to the worst bad. That is the scale. So, in other words, our trauma is the background of our life experiences because our brain, so all of our human experiences, they don't go into some bucket and get deleted. They're always there. And each neuron has, this charge in it, right? There is a polarity, meaning what is the charge? Like if you buy a battery, like there's a charge in it. It's 3 volts or it's 9 volts or something like that. Our human experiences, especially traumatic ones or negative ones, they have a charge in them and they get triggered. And once they're triggered, they do their job. Now, you may say, well, that's awful. But think about this, Frank. Thousands of years ago, if I was living in the Serengeti in Africa with my children roaming, and my little boy says, Daddy, Daddy, look at that beautiful animal. Look at the hair on it. And we all go walk up to it to try to pet it. And then it suddenly eats my boy. We didn't know that was a lion. We didn't know that it was dangerous. For the rest of my life, and to tell everybody, okay, hey, everybody, next time we see that thing, that is not good. So I promise you, for the rest of my life, if I hear a lion, smell a lion, taste a lion, like I'm going to start running the other way. So that is the factory setting. So I always tell people all human addictions, they basically have one thing in common. And it's not age, demographics, how much money you have or don't, how much education you have or not. They basically are living in a very high frequency. So these addictions are a way to get our frequency down. So, in the studies that are done, intimacy, like having sex or making love, is shown to have one of the lowest, like it's where the mind wanders the least. So think about it. How come? How come that when the brain activity is so low when we're intimate with another human being? So think about it. Like imagine the sensory input, like when you're touching another human being and your hands are moving and your body parts are moving and your mouth is moving. Like that is sensory overload, which is what I just said earlier in this podcast. I said, hey, at 10 hertz, our sensory input is amplified. So the subtitle of my book, so my book is called Life Explained, but the subtitle is Chasing 10 Hertz. So the human experience just hates to live constantly in the 40, 50, 60 years. It's too much noise. If you look at people that commit suicide as well, I mean, one of the most common things that comes out if they leave a note is, I just want to turn the noise off. Like some version of that phrase is written in suicide notes because they are living above 30, 40, 50 hertz. It's just a lot of traffic going on constantly. So all addictions, including pornography, they're a way for us to go feel that 10 hertz. And usually, so the real root cause is the trauma that we have suffered, because it's the trauma that establishes the initial context for every human experience. And so I, for example, I'll be vulnerable with you and your audience, but my father abused me pretty much my entire childhood. I mean, I was beaten, I was verbally abused, it's very traumatic when the one human being that's supposed to protect you is the one that is harming you. And as I've grown up, I find that my context and my backdrop is I'm going to protect people who can't. Because as a child, I was like, nobody's protecting me. I mean, I had three older brothers. They didn't protect me. Right? I mean, in a small house, like there are witnesses to everything. So, I took all of that trauma and I wrote 10 books. I took all that trauma and I said, I'm going to understand, how is it possible for a father to abuse a child? That doesn't make sense to me. Everyone has the ultimate backstream that is what they're using to make sense of the human experience. And the irony of all irony is that where we get our magic from is when we take that trauma and we convert it. Like if the source of your meaning, if the source of your purpose is your trauma, ooh, you got it made. Michael Jordan was cut from his high school team. We all know the story. He's been told a million times. That's his trauma. You are rarely going to find a human being doing something amazing historically and currently who isn't converting their trauma. So instead of these vices, these addictions that we have, why not embrace the trauma? Why not say, what was I supposed to learn? How can I use it to make my human experience better, to make the human experience of other people better? So unfortunately, not from a psychological perspective, although I give that science credit, but from a neuroscience perspective, trauma is this high frequency. And any time for the rest of our lives that we hear, smell, any type of sensory input that is related to that trauma, we are going to spike. And the reason we're going to spike is because it's still a trauma. It's still the polarity of that engram, the polarity of that memory is still very high. And the factory setting of the brain is to prioritize that. Why? Because it wants to protect you. It wants to remind you, lion, bad. Run from lion.
Dr. Izzy, I want to acknowledge you, and I want to say thank you for your vulnerability and your ability to share your personal history and how these things have inspired you to do the very important and impactful, meaningful work. Speaking for myself and the audience that'll never get a chance to tell you thank you, I want to take a moment here and just acknowledge that. And I think every person listening will relate. Obviously, the Michael Jordan, he shared it 50 years later in his Hall of Fame speech, right? It was still moving him to tears when he talked about getting cut and turning that trauma. So I think this could maybe be a valuable time to kind of segue. You mentioned the work that we do with men in pornography. I think one of the paradigm shifting things for me early on and has enabled us to kind of move guys through their understanding of what their true struggle is helping them frame it that it's like you're not having a challenge with pornography. There's a nervous. I've defined it or described it as a nervous system issue here. Like porn has just become the lever that very young you learn to pull on to regulate and calm your nervous system. And I probably would assume that when I'm saying nervous system, that's probably regulating the brain to get closer to these 10 hertz, get them down on a lower frequency. So for most of the guys listening, they're not performing athletics at the high level, right? They're not playing on Sundays. They're not aiming to win championships. They're dealing with the life stressors, right? They're dealing with a bombardment of emails in the inbox. They're dealing with trying to scale a business when they're going through, economic shifts. They're dealing with stress of trying to raise a family, all while trying to manage their own life and identity. When we talk about some of the strategies and tools available to us, like where does a guy learn to, I guess, build the ability to access so he's not relying solely on skill in those moments?
Great question. So, first of all, um, we are already historically, and all of us, and I'm sure all of the audience, we are already doing things that are designed to get that frequency down, maybe not all the way to 10. So, what are those things, right? So, we call them, using lay terms, what do you do to de stress, right? People will say things like, I work out, I cook, I listen to music, I read a book, I go for a walk, I go on a vacation. So the list of things that human beings do in order to, they call it de-stress, I call it lowering the frequency, right? That's why we work 5 days, then we have 2 days of a break. Theoretically, those 2 days are designed to give us a break from all the sensory input of the workforce and the workplace and the workday. Okay. So first of all, those kinds of things are around. And so and everyone has their own whatever it is that they like to do. And I will tell you that pornography is one of those ways that people unstress, right? So so the challenge is that many of these things during the course of your workday, like you just said, I have a busy day, I have problems to solve, I have a staff, I whatever it is, I'm struggling with my spouse or my child or whatever the case may be. During the course of the day, like all those things that I just mentioned, you can do them before work, you can do them after work, and maybe some in your lunch break. But during the grind of the day, you cannot do those things. Nobody at 9:30, when they get an email that says you're awful and blah blah blah, and you lost this business, can say, "Okay, everybody, staff, time out. Let me go work out in the gym for an hour and a half, and then I'll come back." That's a good thing to do if you have the luxury of doing that. Most of us don't have that time. Same thing with athletes. When athletes are in the middle of their competition, there's not many things that they can do. If there's 1 second to go and the game is on the line, you can't call timeout and say, oh, let me go spend 45 minutes meditating and then I'll come back. So the point I'm trying to make is that we need different tools, number one, that work faster and are more in the moment. And then number two, and this is very important, maybe the most important thing I say on this podcast, we need to change the definition of what it means to perform at a high level, right? So let's start with the second one, and then I'll teach you a few tools. So I want your audience to consider changing what it means to be the best version of themselves. So I want us to let go of the idea that I got to be the best version of myself, number one, all the time. And then if I am, then I'll be happy or successful. That is not true. Or I need to be the best version of myself at everything. Okay. I can't do that. Nobody can do that. Instead, I want your audience to say, how can I be the best version of myself in the seconds of the most important events of my day? So when I coach athletes, when I coach head coaches, when I coach executives, that's what I tell them. I said, look at your day, either the night before or in the morning, and say, what are the only two? So let's call this game time. What are the two most important events of this day? Just two. I'm not saying that the others aren't important, but I'm saying what are the two most important ones? And for those two most important events of the day, I am going to put everything I can to get to 10 hertz. And what I found is that when people perform at their level or overachieve at the most important parts of their day, then by osmosis, it cascades down to the rest of the day. Conversely, you can do many good things, but the most important part of the day, if you underperform, if you forgot to say something, do something, you missed a shot, it has equally a cascaded negative effect on your day. So we call it cognitive load. The cognitive load, so what is the mental cost of each day, is not the average of all of your experiences. This is a myth. So let's say if 10 things happened to you today, 9 of them were amazing, Frank. One of them wasn't. Most people would assume, oh, 9, 1, I had a good day. No, it doesn't work that way because the spike of that one negative is basically the cost of your day. All right. So the first part of this is change your expectations of what it means to be the best version of yourself. Pick only 2 events. Right. And for those 2 events in the seconds leading up to it, during it, get to and try to stay in 10 hertz. So I'm going to teach you 2 techniques now that allow you to get to 10 hertz. Now, these are just 2 because we don't have time. But in the book, there are 30 or 40 of them. There's even an app out there. And then you can create more. But I want you to understand what it means to do a neurohack. So what is a neurohack? A neurohack is something that you do in a matter of seconds with only your senses. So how often do you have all your 5 senses on you, Frank?
At all times.
Exactly. So you don't have to go somewhere and buy something. They're always with you. So because they're always with you, that means you can always use them. Okay? So the first neurohack that I'm going to teach you is called 10-10. And I don't want you to start doing it until I say go very loudly like that, because I want to explain to you because I want you to experience it. So don't start doing it. When I say go very loudly, which is not now, all I want you to do is I just want you in your own mind, not out loud. You can close your mouth, in your mind. I want you to count from 1 to 10, literally, Frank, as fast as you can, as long as you can say the numbers. Is not counting it. As long as you can say the numbers, count from 1 to 10 as fast as you can. Literally, the second that you get to 10, and this is very important, go back to 1 the opposite way, as slow as you can. Like take your time from 10, 9, and just work your way down. When you get back to 1, give me a thumbs up to tell me that you are done. Any questions?
Nope.
Are you ready?
Ready.
Okay. This is the neurohack called 10-10. Your audience can do it too. Go. What did going from 1 to 10 feel like? Give me one word attributes.
Almost out of control. Maybe that's not one word. Chaotic.
Chaotic. Okay, there you go. Stressed, maybe a little bit. Rushed.
Stressed. Yeah. Rushed.
How about going from 10 back to 1?
The opposite. Calming.
Calming, right? Okay. So that word calm is not a real thing, and chaotic is not a real thing. They're not body parts, they're not organs, but they're English language labels that we use to describe something. So I will tell you that when you went from 1 to 10, you amplified, you increased the frequency in your brain. We created stress, right? This is hormesis. It's a good stress. But when you went back down, you basically spiked yourself down. And I will tell you that that 1-10-10 that you did is the cognitive equivalence of anywhere between 5 to about 20 minutes of traditional methods of calming yourself down. How long did that take to do the 10-10? Not even 30 seconds. It probably more like 10, 15 seconds.
Okay. I guess I was trying to calculate the math where the 10 wasn't a full 10 seconds. Maybe. Yeah, you're probably right. It probably was half of that.
Okay, exactly. So 10, 15 seconds, all right? Okay. And did you need to buy anything to do that? Did you have to go somewhere to do that? Did you have to change your clothes? Is there a certain location that you have to be to do the 10-10? No. So if at 9:30 I get a nasty email, at that moment, what options do I have to get my brain back down before I go to my next meeting, next call, and I don't impact that next human experience because of what happened to me just before. This is a shortened version of the same thing about life that I'm talking about. We take our trauma to our overall life because the trauma is the ultimate context. If my call from 9 to 9:30 spiked to me, then I'm going to take that spike at my 9:30 call, unless I do something like the 10:10 to bring that noise down because the person that I'm talking to at 9:30 deserves my best, right? So this is one example. In certain sports, you can do that. If a guy's about to make a putt and he's waiting for his turn to putt, that guy can do the 10:10 and get their noise down before they even go make the putt. Or in other sports where I have time, I'm not necessarily reacting. I'm about to make a free throw. I can do a 10:10, right? So these are new tools that are designed to complement traditional tools. Now I've measured scans. Those 18,000 that we're talking about. That's what I was measuring. I knew that 10 hertz was magic, but I didn't know how to get you to 10 hertz, right? Until I started to do all these things. And some of these things, some versions of them we have done before, like breathing. Now, breathing works, but our research shows that the spike down is relatively low. So it does work, but if I have something that spikes me really big, and I do a breathing technique, and there's so many different types of them out there. So let's say that something spikes me to about 70 hertz. If I do a breathing technique, it'll probably bring me down about 5-10 hertz. Whereas if I do the 10-10, it'll bring me down 20-30 hertz. So this is part of the intelligence that we have to build, is to know where we are. This is why I personally don't like the term flow. I honor and respect the people who use that term, but there's no scale to flow. Like in my book, there's a big difference if you're at 30 hertz to get to 10 versus if you're at 90. You wouldn't do the same thing. So I give people a language and a framework to say, if something happens to me that is spiking me, what is that spike? Is it a 5 hertz spike, like maybe I'm just a minute late for a call? Or is it a 40 hertz spike, as in I get a text message from my daughter and she said she's in a car accident? Both of those things are going to knock me out of what we call flow, but I don't like that term because I need to know. And if 0 to 100 is very simple. It's a simple scale. And not just is it simple, I didn't invent it. That's just the brain, and that's the electricity in it, right? Other people, like we can measure that. How do you measure flow? Right. So let's do another one. Okay. So we'll do one more. So take your two hands together like this. And for the people not watching, I'm having him put his hands palm facing next to each other. Again, don't start until I say go very loudly. Okay. So your left hand is not going to move. Your left hand is attached to your left side where your heart is, all that good stuff. Your left hand is not going to move. You're going to imagine that the left hand is a mountain. You're going to imagine that the fingers of your right hand are legs. And we're going to do 6 sets. We're going to climb this mountain 6 times, 3 one way, 3 another way. The first 3, we're going to rush up this mountain just like that. Oh, oh, oh. The next 3, we're going to take our time. And we're going to feel the fingertips on the legs on the right hand, as well as the sensation on the left hand. Are you ready? So 6 of those, 3 fast, 3 slow, go. Okay. How did the 3 fast feel?
All over the place. Like I didn't know what I was doing.
How did the 3 slow feel?
In control,
Calm?
calm,
Relaxed?
very relaxed.
If I were measuring you, I would tell you that the first 3, you probably had less than 5% access to your input, to whatever is already in your brain, the things that you've learned, the things that you've read, the things that you know how to do. It's already there, but you can't access it. I will tell you that there's not much you could see or hear or feel when you were doing the first 3. I will tell you that when you went slower, you increased your access. Like right now, if you were to go solve a problem, your ability to solve it just changed, right? So again, how long did it take you to do that?
10 seconds.
And how often do you have your hands on you?
all the time.
all the time. Is there a certain location that you have to do this? Do you have to pay somebody to do that? No. So, you know, these things lower the electricity, they spike down the surges. There's too much stimulation to our brains right now. Our brain is not designed to consume this much stimuli through our phones and our devices. And not only are we experiencing our own trauma, but we are also experiencing secondary trauma. Like the minute something goes wrong, someone is texting us, it's on social media. So we're living, I always tell people, physically, it's never been easier to be healthy. Like diet, physical activity, nutrition. I mean, there's so much information on how to be physically healthy. Mentally, it's never been harder, ever. Because everyone's noise is so high, because we're consuming so much constant stimulation. And what our brain stores is a negative trauma. It doesn't even have to be our own. So it has never been harder. So in an effort to spike ourselves down, to get the noise out, we become addicted to all kinds of things, pornography just being one of them. We just want to feel in that moment like your brain is shutting off, right? And so, like I said, when you look at suicide notes, that is a common theme that you see being expressed. I just want to cut the noise off. I don't want to live. It's too much. That's a very busy noise. That's a very busy brain and a very noisy brain. So I don't know that the traditional models of spiking down, relaxation, working out, cooking, going to movies, eating, vacation, these are good things to do. I want people to keep doing them. They're not enough for the world that we live in today. They're just not enough. They take too long. They're chunks of work. We need more of a fix it as you go model. So again, in my book, Life Explained, Chasing 10 Hertz, I explain all of this. And trust me, it's my 10th book, you know, it took me much more effort to write something simplistically. It would have been far easier for me to go all nerd and, explain everything. But part of my job as someone who has this knowledge is to make it simple so everyone can understand it. It's tragic, in my opinion, and we can end on this. I find it tragic. I don't use this term lightly, Frank, that as a child and an adult, we are taught and learn so many things from our parents, from our teachers, from our mentors, from our bosses, from our peers. So many things that we have learned in classes, in high school, college. Where was the class on our brain? Like the one thing you are going to use for everything forever, we know nothing about? Like, that's awful. So I'm trying to change that. I feel like people understood this amazing, amazing, phenomenal thing that they already have and the senses that they already had on them. Like, I only taught you two. There are like dozens and dozens of them. But you don't need any tools. You don't need the kinds of stuff that everyone is selling you. And once you've learned those two, do you ever have to learn them again? No, they're yours now. I guarantee you for the rest of your life, some version of these two you will use and you will teach other people. It's free. What it takes to spike yourself down in the moments that matter, you already have on you. It's free. It's your privilege of being human. So the highest form of human intelligence, by far, is to be able to know what the frequency of your brain is, so you can make the appropriate adjustment to go back towards 10. And a 10 brain will figure anything out. And that's the magic. That's empowerment. That's the magic of life. Is it doesn't matter what happens to me. I know what to do. And the first step of knowing what to do is get your brain down and let that brain figure out what to do next.
Dr. Izzy, once again, I want to say thank you. I was excited coming in. I had no idea that this conversation was going to go in this direction. And I've been doing this for 6 years, 333 episodes. I've interviewed in my opinion, many of the world's leading experts in a lot of different areas. Incredible conversations. It's such an honor to host this show. This may be the most valuable from a tangible perspective conversation that I've ever had, specifically for the guys in the audience and the men that I'm out here serving. I already know exactly what I'm going to do with just those 2 tips. I know 10 books I'm going to order of yours, 10 copies, and who I'm going to gift them away to. This has been an absolute honor. And guys, if you got one piece of value out of today's conversation, head over there. We're going to have the link down for Life Explained, Chasing 10 Hertz, down for Dr. Izzy below. Like I said, we're going to be gifting some away inside of our community. We're going to be using just those 2 tips and all the other ones that I pick up. And I'm excited. I work with a lot of young athletes as well, mentoring, helping them progress through their athletic career, teaching them just that countdown of 10, like before you step up and perform, is something I'm super excited. Real quick before we end the show, we had Funk Roberts on last week. It's an honor for myself to be included in the lineup of speakers like yourself and all the other amazing speakers. I know you're going to be participating in the 10-day virtual summit. Can you give the audience just an insight into what you're going to be sharing there as well, so they can look forward? And obviously we'll have that link down for you guys to register for that free event as well.
Yeah, thank you. And again, what an honor to do it with you. And, I do think that the illiteracy of people in general, but men in particular, um, is something that we have to change. We cannot afford to know so much about so many things and literally nothing about our brain and how it works. That's not acceptable. And at a time when it is so much harder than any other generation since the beginning of time to be mentally healthy, we need some information. We need new tools. So I'm going to be going deeper into what we talked about. I'll share a lot more and a lot different neuro hacks. I'll go a little bit nerd on folks, but I think I think what you are doing and what the conference is trying to do by focusing on men and our health is so important. We have moms, we have sisters, we have wives, we have daughters um, that need a good, male figure in their life. We have sons that need a good male figure in their life. And I am someone who suffered deeply. It took me 30 plus years to recover from the abuse that I suffered from my father. Um, and he passed away a long time ago. Um, and I think I understand him now. And I think that my understanding of how his brain was working at the time has allowed me to move forward.
Incredible. And guys, once again, menover40.thesuperhumanlifepodcast.com if you want to register for that free event. At this point, go ahead and register and get the upgrade package there as well. So you'll have Dr. Izzy's training and talk saved for lifetime. Pick up a copy or multiple copies of Life Explained, Chasing 10 Hertz down there in the show notes below. But Dr. Izzy, once again, I just want to say thank you for the work that you've done over these years, the work that you are continuing to do, and your ability to go so many different directions with us here today, from an emotional story and getting vulnerable and sharing with us your background and what you went through, but more importantly, weaving it into your expertise and your life's work, and giving the audience something that they can actually walk away and implement to get better control of their lives, which is what we're dedicated to doing here, both with the Superhuman Life and also with the Rebuilt Man, our work in helping guys with pornography addiction. So I'm excited to continue to foster and build a relationship with you. I hope this isn't the last time you and I speak. We'll have to have you back on the show because there's so much more we can get into. But guys, pick up a book, Life Explained, Chasing 10 Hertz, plug down there in the show notes below. Register for the Men Over 40 Summit at menover40.thesuperhumanlifepodcast.com. And guys, share this one across the board with as many people as possible. Dr. Izzy, thank you again, and we will talk very, very soon.